Room service. Now, you may be a little bit confused by the hat because it may not look like a room service hat, but let me assure you of a couple of things. Number one, I don't have a bellhop hat, so this is the closest that we're going to get. Number two, this could be one of two types of room service. I'll give you a chance to think about that, and both of them have the ability to be a good time. Let's put it that way. But you may be wondering, what is with the room service hat? Are you looking to get arrested? Are you looking to get detained, entertained, self-explained, masturbaned? Sorry, I'm trying to come up with words. Anyway, it has to do with today's prompt because today is the first Monday of the month, so it is LMIAY time. That is the day where we go over the stories that you guys submitted for the prompt that I gave you and just bask in how vast and how creative all of you guys are, or at least the prompts that we read. However, before we get started and before I detail you what the prompt was and why you're being room served today, a couple of things. You guys know the drill. Number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is what we are doing here at LMIAY, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt. You can get as wild and wicked and playful and experimental as you want. It's just meant to be fun. This is a low judgment zone because it's just about having a good time. And then on the first Monday video of the month, we read some of those responses within reason and just have a blast. Everybody is always so creative, and it is so interesting to see the different ways people come up with stories that relate to the same thing. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, that chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work. No AI on anything. That is no covers, no using it in the writing, and no using it on social media, or you won't be featured here. Don't make me bring out the prod. You know what? This hat needs the cigarette. That completes the look, okay? Doesn't it? Like, tell me this doesn't. All right? Right? Then, the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books. Have a good time. Don't have a good time. It's up to you. But I hope, of all things, that I don't waste your time. And my newest novel, which will be the first in the Legend of Bill Cassidy, will hopefully come out later this year, but I got to get on track for that. Look, that's stress right there. With that said, let's jump into this. So the prompt that I gave everyone last month was something strange happens at a hotel. So with that said, the first person we are reading today is Allison Miller. I lost 100 pounds to fit into this red dress. I cried as I stood in front of the mirror at the lines around my eyes and my neck. I was only 40, but damn if I didn't see the years all over me. I took the dress off and packed. My mom was going to meet me at the Beaumont, where I was going to get a gig singing old jazz tunes until the end of time if I could. I never would have accepted this job in my 20s. I was too proud back then. Now, no marriage, no kids, and a resume as small as my will to live. I am finally living my dream. The hotel was in the middle of a desert, and I had to check in as I would be staying there for that week. That's strange. The attendant just handed me a regular key instead of a key card. I decided to forego riding in a rickety old elevator and walked down the long hallway with a blue carpet and blue wallpaper to find the 4th floor. The stairs were slippery and uneven, making it hard for me to count the floors as there were no signs to indicate the level. I leaned over, out of breath, and a little loopy, and deduced that I had one more level. I opened the door to be greeted by one more door. The key in my hand seemed to buzz the closer I got to the door. My curiosity overwhelmed me, and I turned the key in the lock, pushing the door open. Stale air wafted into the space, a tiny bit of light seeping in from the far windows that had been painted green. Nope. I turned and went back down the stairs, being easier to traverse. The hotel is empty now. The formerly young and smiling woman had been replaced by a pale, expressionless person of an indeterminate gender. The uniform is different, too. The young woman had a blue polo with the hotel's name and logo on it. This person wore a red and gold doublet. Their voice was a mix of two voices, and it said to me, "You should have taken the elevator." Forget this. I placed the key back on the counter and exited the hotel, getting back in my car and jetting out of there. My phone had been left in the car and was dead now. Damn. I hate the phone. My car stalled and stuttered and stopped completely. I wasn't about to go back into the hotel. I got out, lifted the hood, and reeled back in shock. Blood had spattered all over the engine, along with what appeared to be straw or grass. A rat crawled out to where the filter should have been and sniffed at the blood, pushing itself off the hot engine. I remembered that I had a snack in the back seat. I opened up to see the same rodent teeth in my snack. But what was going on? I wasn't far from the interstate and could walk from here. I grabbed my bag, tucked my dead phone into my pocket, and headed out. The desolate wasteland stretched out as far as I could see, and the air had no smell. The wind carried no dirt, and the only animals I saw for the many miles I had walked. My feet didn't hurt like they should have. I should be close to the inner. My thoughts were interrupted by the lack of cars on what should be a busy interstate. I turned to my right to see the hotel as if it just about 500 feet away instead of the miles and miles it should have been. Is that my mom? How can I see her so closely? My feet burned to run. One half of me wanted to go to the interstate and the other wanted to rush to my mom. My breath caught in my throat as I walked to the hotel. No, it's a trick. I don't know what wanted to. Something changed me. I looked down to see the red dress. I lifted off of my feet, unwillingly being pulled back to the hotel. I can't move or open my mouth to object. I passed through the walls and onto the stage. I'm on the stage. The thing that held me let go, and my mom is in the audience. A carbon microphone stood in front of me. The androgynous person in the front row, lifting their drink and uttering one song and we let you go. The androgynous person is in the front row, lifting a drink and uttering one song and we let you go. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I'm 24 again. I don't know why I know for certain that it's 24, but I do. I open my mouth and sing, Slow Like Honey by Fiona Apple. The blackened, soulless eyes of the audience turn blue, brown, or green. Wash member leaning in and eagerly listening to me. I glanced over at the person playing piano and find my ex-boyfriend. He left me when he found another girl who wanted marriage right then. I smiled at him and turned back to the audience. Let's play the rock song we changed. Our song was The Last Remaining Light by Audioslave. I could never quite describe why that song felt like a home I'd never lived in, but that was what it was to me. I sang the song with every bit of passion I'd ever had. This could be heaven or this could be hell. I could have died on the way. Or maybe I have been dead for a while. I don't spare it another thought as my mom's woos from the audience and my boyfriend goes on to the song that we wrote together. I'm here now, here in my red dress, with the one who got away and my mom. Oh, right. My mom died last year. Oh, yeah, and that boy who I left behind died 2 years ago. Well, honey, I think you know. You're dead. Now, if it's heaven, hell, or purgatory, that is anybody's guess. However, clearly, you're living the life that you never got to live of some sort, or fulfilling the desires. This has great pacing in it and a great atmosphere to it. It also makes me think of, like, when you think about ghosts or you think about the dead, I mean, obviously, I think about ghosts quite a bit since one of my main series has ghosts in it, and personally, ghost stories just interest me for the sole purpose of the history or the personal things tied to what happens in ghost stories or why ghost stories happen. Anyway, if you think of like people with unfinished business, and then so like they would be the only ones to know why they are going through a dream state of some kind, because they're the ones with the regret that hasn't let them go. That's not a reference to Bodymore, but it sort of is. Very nice, Allison. The next story is by the whole daddy himself, Mike Vanhoose. Finally back. Look, I had to. You know what I have to do when I see you. And that was it. The annoying buzz of my pocketed phone reminds me that I've been tracked down once again. Of course it would be her. I can hear her voice screeching through the texts she's sending me. Mike, are you at the hotel? Yes, dear, I just unpacked. The office crew and I were just about to head out to dinner. Where are you going? We're going to eat here. You know every hotel in Las Vegas has a buffet. Okay. Text me when you finish and stay out of trouble. I don't respond. The food is slightly better than recycled hospital fare after being unrefrigerated, but for a business trip, what can you expect? Some of us end up at the bar complaining about our spouses, kids, and life in general. Except for Kelly. She's always happy about life. It's very annoying. Sometime between my third whiskey sour and Delta Dawn being butchered like a shot beef of two drunk chicks at karaoke, a mysterious, sultry lady walks into the bar, wearing a classic little black dress and heels. She takes a table in the corner, sitting alone. I see a familiar drink in her hand and flag down the bartender. Is that lady drinking a whiskey sour? I nod toward the lady. Her creamy complexion stands out in the semi-darkness of the dimly lit corner. She seems to notice and nods back. The bartender shakes his head. Trust me, buddy. Stay away from that one. She's trouble. My phone buzzes again, repeatedly. Mike, text me. Mike, where are you? Damn it, Mike. Mike, answer me. I look up from my phone and see the lady in the corner gone. A hand on my shoulder and a voice from behind startles me. Whiskey sour? Her voice is smooth, flowing like a quiet little stream. Her hands feel as delicate as a snowflake, but somewhere beneath there is a strength that I can't place. Some type of power? Control? Momentarily stunned, I fumble for words. Yeah. I'm whiskey sour. She smiles and then laughs. Her smile radiates across the bar. Hello, whiskey sour. I'm Lily. After a moment, I start laughing. Well, shit. I guess that made a good first impression. Mike, by the way, I only drink whiskey sour. My phone buzzes again. Mike, you'd better answer me this second. Lily nods. What? Wife giving you a hard time? You could say that. I put the phone back into my pocket, hoping that would be the last text of the night. Don't worry, handsome. I won't tell. Lily gives me a knowing wink before sitting down. We have a nice conversation over several whiskey sours, several more than I'm used to. As time passed by, the bartender calls for assistance. Help this man to his room, please. Lily smiles. I'll take him. The bartender clutches a rag in his hand until his knuckles turn white. Leave this one alone. She shakes her head. Her eyes go from playfully promiscuous to don't fuck with me in an instant. Unless you want to trade places, I suggest you shut your mouth. The bartender backs off and holds his hands in defeat. Lily guides me to the bed, takes off my clothes, and ties me down. I drunkenly hear myself slur. Fuck yes! This is some kind of kinky shit. Like a serpent, she slithers her body against mine until she's eye level. You comfy, Mike? And gives me a peck on the tip of my nose. Oh yeah, feeling fine. Good. Wanna get creepy? My eyes get big and my heart races. Hell yeah, show me what you've got. Lily straddles my waist. Do you know the story of creation? King James's version? Confusion. Yeah? Lily nods. Good. First question. Who is Adam's wife? More confusion than ever. I shake my head. What? I thought that we were... Before I registered the pain, I heard the sound of my jaw breaking. Lily's body still sat atop me, but gone was the bubbly wanton starlet from the bar. The person or personality was far more than human. I asked you a question. Who was Adam's wife? The pain in my jaw began radiating through my face and head. I was getting nauseous, scared. I pissed myself. Lily didn't seem to notice. I finally yelled out, Eve! It was Eve! Lily leaned back and smiled. Indeed, Eve was Adam's wife. She was perfectly suited for him. God put him to sleep, borrowed one of his ribs, and made her as part of him so that she would always be part of man, always be subservient to him. Does that sound right to you, Mike? I nod my head, my broken jaw going numb for the moment. Lily continues her story. Do you know Adam had another wife before Eve? Finding it hard to talk, I shake my head negative. Yes, indeed. Or so it's reported. She was supposedly created at the same time Adam was. She was his equal in all regards. She would not subjugate herself to Adam's rule, so she was punished by being replaced and kicked out of the garden. Rumor had it that she held congress with an archangel, married the devil. Is a demon, and mother of all vampires. Have you heard of this before? I shake my head no. Lily leans down and gently kisses me. My trembling lips do nothing to hide the fear. Her name is Lily. Lily smiles. I watch as her teeth change in front of me, and all I can do is weakly mutter, Oh God. She cackles as she prepares to sink her teeth in. God. God is all about love, and I don't love you. I hear my phone buzz one last time. Well, Michael, this is sort of what happens when you go with a Jezebel, of sorts, not your wife. It does not pay off. That's what, not worth the risk. Not worth the risk, buddy. I don't care how small that black dress she is wearing is. You should have thought about it, and now you are... somebody's dinner. RIP. Maybe there are better ways to deal with whatever's going on with your wife in this story than By your wife, I mean the character's wife. Look, believe me, nothing personal. Just prepare yourself. The next story is by Mae Tanner. Wendriel took a seat at the hotel bar and glanced around. Women crowded around a few men scattered about the dimly lit room. Her lip twisted. Had law enforcement cooperated with the aliens by arresting the territory's strongest men in the months preceding the conquest? How many men had died when the disruptors short-circuited their implant? An auburn-haired woman took a seat beside her at the bar. She ordered a drink, her fingers moving as she spoke in sign language. The aliens came to the prison hospital this morning. They took all of the implanted prisoners. Wendriel glanced at the newcomer, recognizing her as Dr. Janala Titanius. She sat her drink on the counter. Did they tell you why they wanted them? The other woman sighed, making a sign of negation. No, they instructed me not to return to work, though. They said that they no longer need my service. Who knows what they planned for the remaining prisoners? Why would they do that? No clue. Rendell stared at the mirror behind the bar. Are there any surviving implanted convicts they haven't taken? Maybe a few serving private citizens? Most died during invasion. Wendriel took a sip of her drink. The conversation was going nowhere. I'm leaving town soon. I'll pass you on to another agent. What's the point? I don't work at the prison anymore. Janala finished her drink and turned to leave. The door to the hotel lobby opened and a squad of aliens entered the bar, led by the blonde female. Janala froze. Her fingers moved subtly. That one took the implanted convict. Wendriel's eyes narrowed. This was the first female alien she'd seen besides their ruler. She'd wondered if the ruler was the only female alien. The female alien gestured toward the tables where men sat, and her companions split into groups of 3. Each trio approached a man. 2 aliens restrained the man, while the third touched the back of his neck. The couple sat in the corner opposite Wendriel. When a trio of aliens approached their table, the woman stood protesting. A second group of aliens converged on her and held her while the others restrained the man. Moments later, the aliens escorted the man out of the bar. Wendriel glanced around. 2 other men followed the aliens out. They released the other. Why are they taking those men? Janala glanced back at her. It looks like they're collecting everyone with an implant. At least every man with one. Do you have a list of private citizens with contracts for implanted convicts? Maybe. I should still have access to the prison records. If I can, I'll bring it tomorrow. Wendriel slipped into the headquarters and tapped onto the cell leader's door. Minutes later, the lock clicked and the cell leader peeked out. She yawned. Why are you here? It's the middle of the night. The aliens confiscated every implanted convict. I met the contact tonight. They came to the bar as she was leaving. The cell leader's eyes sharpened. Weren't all the implanted convicts killed during the invasion? Some were still in prison or working for private citizens. My contact thinks a few might remain. Come in. I need to check something. The cell leader sat at the desk and consulted a computer while Wendriel sat on a couch. Half an hour later, she rolled her head on her shoulders. We've used implanted convicts as law enforcement and security for generations. Wendriel furrowed her brows. Everyone knows that. True, but did you notice that they've been increasing the numbers of crimes that qualify for implantation? No. Have they really been doing that? The cell leader nodded. It started 15 years ago. They did it gradually, but went to the higher gear 5 years ago. Wendriel moved to stand by the cell leader's shoulder and stared at the computer screen. How many men remain? The cell leader touched the screen. They'd implanted 68%. They'd implanted 68% of the men by the start of the invasion. Worldwide, it's worse here in Badora's territory. She drew her finger down the screen. Ashira's territory had a small uptick. Ahilde's territory stayed the same percentage since the program began. She glanced up at Wendriel, her eyes troubled. It's like someone deliberately crippled us. The aliens' disruptors make implanted troops and mechanical defenses useless. They didn't attack until our defenses were at their weakest. Well, clearly this is a portion of a larger thing, but can you imagine? And there's a lot going on in here because an invasion is going on. So I wonder how far into the story this is, and if this is leading up to being the, climax of the first part of the story, or, the inciting incident, and the rest of the story is going to be the fallout of the aliens, or if this is more closer to the climax where something is about to be done. Because that says a very different thing depending on about what the story is about, depending on where this kind of high tension moment Lies. Also, can you imagine? So, if you were aware that aliens had taken over, this is a question for everybody, and they've got implanted people that they can control at any time, places, how comfortable would you feel being out in public? Because I don't know if they could tell in this universe if somebody is implanted or not. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you know somebody is being mind controlled by aliens, how comfortable would you be in a shared space not knowing when the aliens might attempt to assert their dominance? The next story is by Egao Chan, called No Vacancy. No luggage, no spare clothes, and not even a hint of how he got here. Bison stood in the hallway or a hotel whose name he could not recall. In his hand was a simple metal key with the number 304 taped on its bow. He looked forward and then back. He could not see an entrance or exit in either direction. A shadow obscured his sight, for that he could not only blame the lights embedded on the walls, they took the shape of cheap and even tacky-looking faux retro three-pronged candle holders, with 3 small bulbs acting as the fake fire. They were just bright enough to light up the solid wallpaper, the light brown carpet, and similarly monotonous white ceiling. Everything gave off a strange sense of neatness and cleanliness, yet Bryson could find no comfort in any detail. He checked the door closest to him, room 108. So he would need to find the stairs to go up. He chose the direction that he was facing. Identical doors and lights moved past him, but the new ones appeared out of shadows to greet and bore him. He checked the door to his right. Room 122, and the room to his left, and it was room 123. There was no exit or stairs in sight. Maybe he was in the wrong direction. He walked by a few more doors and reached room 130 and room 131. Still nothing. He turned around and began pacing. It was possible that the stairs would be at where the start of the room number was. Maybe it would be somewhere near the smaller number instead. He must have passed at least 20 doors before he stopped to check the numbers again. He checked the room numbers again. He checked right first. Room 204. He did not walk up and he stared. Could it be that this hotel numbered the rooms differently? Bryson frowned and checked the room on his left. Room 205. He looked back and recognized the numbers on the doors behind him. Room 206, 207, 208, 209, and then further away, the doors were closed to the shadow and he could not see clearly. Fuck! Bryson cursed with a low voice. None of the numbers made any sense. He did not remember passing a room where 1 ended and 2 began, but at least he was going towards the direction where the number was decreasing. If he continued forward, maybe he would reach the rooms that would start with 3. He continued forward while focusing his attention on the numbers 203, 202, 201, 200, and then, with bated breath, he looked upon the next room. It was room 301. Another nonsensical number, but at least he was on the right floor. Maybe he needed to double-check with the staff on how the rooms were numbered, or maybe even complain. He continued straight and reached 304 expectantly. He pushed the key into the keyhole and tried to open the door. It could not turn. He tried a few more times to no avail. He pulled the key out, put it close before his eyes to take a look. He almost threw it to the ground. The number taped onto it was 404. He checked the front and back of the key a few times, and it was only one tape, one number. 404. There was no way he would mistake it. Something was not right here. Only now did he realize, and with the realization did he begin to notice some more irregularities, the very first of which was that the lights were dimmed, yet he could barely see any shadows around him. He stood up. He stood up and faced the wall. He hovered one hand just inches from the wall, and finally a piece of solid shadow was cast. Yet the shadow did not land on the solid wallpaper, but a piece of uneven concrete with a few cracks and even mold spots. He moved his hand and used another hand. The concrete followed the shadow. He pushed against the wall with his palms. The touch registered, just like coarse wallpaper would. And then he ran his hands on the wall. He could only feel the paper. Yet the sight of the concrete did not lie. So at a random inspiration, he hovered his left hand above the spot on the wall, revealing a sight of slightly cracked concrete. Then he reached the concrete spot in the shadows using his right index finger. Cold, smooth. It was concrete, under the shadow cast by his hand. There was no lock on the door for room 304. There was a hole in the wood where the lock was supposed to be. He tried pushing and pulling the door. It would not budge. Not willing to give up, Bryson knelt down and put his hand still hovering at a position of the lock. The hole in the door was much bigger than a simple keyhole, so maybe he could see what was on the other side. He did not get to see what was in the room, because an eye blocked the sight, an eye on the pale face, looking right back at him through the hole. Well, I'm glad that he didn't try to stick his hand, or cattle prod, through the hole, as I have heard has happened in some stories of a hole in the wall. But you know, you never know what's on the other side when you stick a cattle prod through a hole in the wall. It could be another dimension. You could get isekai'd. It could be something else entirely. Also, I mean, you could call it bravery, you could call it stupidity, but the fact that he kept going, even though he was like, this is weird. This is the personality of an explorer. He is gonna make some sort of discovery, hopefully not by prodding the hole with the wrong things, but also hopefully he doesn't die because Paleface is looking him in his face. Anyway, moving on. Great job, Egao Chan. I wonder what happens next. The next story is by Connor Barnier. Sometimes I wonder if the stars are scared to come out at night, preferring to hide away, forever unseen. The thought comes to me as the sun sets on the highway, blinding my face through the windows. Despite this, my eyelids droop, my head sways, and I forget just how many arms have held the steering wheel. Candlewick lays like a beanbag in the passenger seat, sucking on his pen and blowing smoke out the window of the old beat-up minivan. How long does that last? I ask. It refills automatically, connected to my stash at home. He drawls. I can't believe I decided to just drop everything and go on a road trip with a total stranger. He really doesn't even have a license? If my mom knew where I was, she'd call me a stupid girl, forgetting that I'm 23 now, and yet I don't regret it one bit. Hey, Charlie? Wick asks with a stupid, sloppy grin. I know what he's about to say. He's been subtly hinting at it for hours. It's getting kinda late, right? A hotel would be nice. I look at him instead of the road, which is dumb, but my judgment isn't at its best right now. He pats down his white trench coat, pretending to look for something. Don't be mad, but I think I left my wallet at our last stop, he says, thinking he's so sly. Maybe I regret it a little. I can pay. I sigh. Yes, thank you. It'll be nice to relax for a bit. As if he hasn't been relaxing this entire time. Well, regardless, we find a town after a few minutes with an old hotel to boot. Wick talks first, asking for the room on the 13th floor before making room for me, or rather, my wallet. The elevator is small and rickety, matching the rest of the building, and I reach for the 13 button. But there isn't one, so I count again. 10, 11, 12, 14. There's no button, I tell Wick, who tries to look confused. That's weird. I guess we'll just have to take the stairs, he says, pressing the 12 button. The stairwell is metal and gray, with graffiti adding minimal flavor. I walk up the steps from the 12th floor to the 13th, but I'm greeted with a dull plaque for the 14th. Actually, hotels don't have a 13th floor, Wick says, before I can even get out a word. Superstitions and all that. The key says 13th floor on it. He ignores me, instead looking at his feet as he walks up the steps, counting each one, and stopping at the 13th, crumbling to the ground. He starts pressing his fingers to where the 12th and 13th steps intersect. This doesn't do anything, so he tries to press his head into it instead. I think you've had a little too much to smoke, I say. No, wait, give me a second. It's just really finicky and no, I'm out of patience. I don't know how long I can watch him make a fool of himself. I walk down the steps around him, ready to go get a new key, but that's when his head disappears, and his neck looks like flat as a paper. Any noise that he was making stops, but his hand reaches out toward me, desperately, insistently, begging for me to take it. I recognize it from the day that we first met, when he asked me to join him on an adventure of a lifetime. I didn't hesitate then. I grab his hand and I feel like a bird sucked into a jet engine. Something tugs on my arm, and there is a white line and Candlewick yanks me out at the other end of the hallway. 13th floor is written in fancy white letters on a shiny black plaque, and Wick laughs. My head spins, and I don't know if it's from the trip through the steps or the hallway twisting itself upside down as it goes. Dozens of impossible things populate the space, and the drowsiness floats from my body like a wayward wind. I don't even know how to describe it at all. A brain riding a bike, a mammoth man, a floating red spot, a tiny blue demon, a pair of feet dressed as bride and groom. I really don't know how Wick is going to top this one. I turn to look at my companion. He sucks on his pen for an absurdly long time, eyes popping out of his head before blowing smoke, clapping his hands together and exclaiming, "Let's do this!" I'm dragged along by hand, Wick pushing ahead with a real pep in his step, practically skipping. We passed by as strange colors and sensations, sounds and smells. The air feels cold here, then hot, then like static. The smell of wet dog, blood, cookies, parents arguing, the sounds of laughing, screaming, neighing, squishing. I don't understand, I say, though my words are lost in the noise. Every hotel in the multiverse has an entrance to the 13th floor, he says. Where's our room at? I shout over the noise. No idea, Wick laughs. I look at the key tag, room 13. I look at the room sign as we dance around a trio of singing doctors wheeling a belting skeleton on a gurney. Room red, room B. Room ram, room rom. Ram room. Room 12. Room 14. Let's try this one, Wick says, pulling open a door of a room simply labeled 13. Inside is a single round table that's less King Arthur and more CIA. 1,000 eyes sit in one seat while a featureless blob sits beside it, and a cat with overalls and a pipe across from it. At the far end of the table is, though I don't quite believe it, the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. A giant neon sign lights him from behind, reading the 13th Club in big bold letters. The man of the moment sits straighter and his eyes widen. "Candlewick!" he thunders like a storm. "Oops, wrong room," Wick says, unlike a storm. "Are you really still mad about that?" Roosevelt growls and transforms into an absolutely shredded black bear, though still sporting his signature stash. Candlewick grabs some hotel towels from inside of the doorway and then my hand and tells me to run. I ask why, and he says that the towels from the 13th floor are the softest thing that I'd ever feel. I meant, why does Teddy Roosevelt want to kill you? It's only a few doors down when drywall explodes next to me and my breathing cuts short. The massive hand of a werebear squeezes around my neck and lifts me off the ground. His eyes dark and endless. I'm facing my death. I don't know how he got ahead of us. I don't know why he's attacking me instead of Candlewick. I don't know how any of this works, or really what's going on. Wick got me a little used to the supernatural and strange, but this is something else entirely. Too much. He and Teddy argue at each other, but I'm not listening. I'm crawling at the beast's indestructible fingers. Darkness creeps at me. Everything is so loud. Where am I? I didn't tell my mom where I was going, and I lost my phone when we met the swamp guy. Would Wick tell what happened to me? Would she even understand what he was saying? That I was strangled to death by a somehow still living Teddy Roosevelt werebear? She's going to be so mad when I get home. A colorful beam shoots from the end of Wick's pen, splashing against the fur and flesh, and the rainbow-soaked former president shrinks and disappears. My hands and knees crash against the carpet, and I frantically grasp my neck, feeling the shadows of death's cold fingers. On the floor in front of me falls a little teddy bear with a white mustache. Candlewick wraps around me and lifts me to my feet, checking me all over, his smile sorely missing. He asks if I'm okay and desperately apologizes for letting that happen. Teddy Roosevelt was strangling me to death, and now he's the kind of teddy bear that I put on my bed. All I can do is start to laugh. Wick grabs my hand and runs us back towards the way that we came. I don't regret this one bit. I feel like this falls perfectly in line with us reading John Dies at the End, because this feels like the same level of absurdity as John Dies at the End, and like also the sauce. I mean, clearly not the same thing, but more like a comp title. If you needed a comp title for this style of writing, John Dies at the End is where you would go. Am I wrong? Does anybody else feel that? What a wild ride. Something definitely strange happened in that hotel. The next story is by a Varmintarian as opposed to vegetarian. I don't know why the first thing I thought of with Varmintarian was Vegemite. I know it not even a little bit, but that's I'm sorry. Although Clumpland itself may be a veritable wad of man-made structures, or rather an amorphous jumble of parts atop the incidental planetoid of decommissioned holes in the building, rather cube-shaped, with big square-paned windows for every single room to give a lovely view of all lifeless rocks of the asteroid's belt and all of the wreckage interbetwixt. The structure is the Crate Motel, which is probably the most storied building building on clumpland that serves as both hotel and apartment building, being the first structure meant as temporary lodgings once people started scrambling off the old planet. Dwelling in space has only strengthened what might either be deemed a sense of magic or a taste for the supernatural. Asteroid miners tend to carry around a tiny tip of a certain fair lady as good luck charm and often resemble dwarves. Malfunctions are blamed on goblins or gremlins. Salvage crews going to the aeons for derelicts give the dead their due out of the dreads of being haunted or hunted by the vengeful undead. It can be quite a scary place out there at times, so it helps to have a place where one can curl up and rest, for which the crate is well renowned as quite the middling place so far as quiet goes, never mind the haunted rooms. Nevertheless, the gremlins or whatever creatures are seemingly ever amuck, ever ascurry, and ever unseen in the ducts and vines of wires. One of the maintenance men there went by the name of Jerry, as such was his name, and just about had his hands full with the same exact issue the rest of the staff had to fuss with. Mushrooms were growing out from under the maintenance panels, and neither he nor anyone else could figure out what was causing this. Even so, he was grateful to be working inside for a change and not to have residents fussing at him for the time being. So this woman comes up to him, a short little thing of maybe 5 foot high with a grain of not quite condescension, to gawk at the maintenance man brought low to the natural environment for what menagerie the place provided. The tired man crouched and crumpled down to somewhere half her height. Obviously, he was a little bit bothered to have someone breathe down his neck again, especially in such an aching, not quite prone position, but tried to be nice about telling her, if I didn't know any better, I'd think that we might just have some gnomes living in here. Oh, that's just superstition. Not an ounce of hesitation in her voice. He looked back over his shoulder to get a look at her again, the smug, pedantic grin. This was going to be a long night. So he tells her, "Sweetie, I have seen some whack-ass shit in my day, and there ain't nothing gonna surprise me if a bunch of weird-ass creatures are living in here somewhere." But then came the condescension once again. "Well, I'm just saying that it's the future, and you can't be believing that sort of thing, okay?" And the grin grew ever more smug. "Lady, it's what used to be the future in the past, and we're living in the past of the future. Ain't none of that current day nonsense gonna explain why there's fungus growing up in here." So the grin on that 5-foot bother went on to tell a little story. "Back when I was a child, my father used to scare me into closing the curtains by telling me a superstition. You better close those curtains, pumpkin, or else the window man, he's gonna come in and he's gonna get ya. You'll get got." Well enough, the smugness was back in full. She kept on recounting her story, and went, "Of course, now that I've moved out, I don't ever cover the windows. I even go double or nothing most of the time. There's no window man out there who calls my bluff." She leaned down right next to his ear and whispered, "It's a silly idea, like the gnomes." Then stood to a more smug height. He was about to go on about how he could cook a whole skillet with what was growing behind the panels, but he noticed something familiar about this woman. She was dressed in rather form-fitting clothing that would embarrass anyone sensible, had hair of a certain crop and color he recognized. And in that moment of synapses, he stood to his feet, pointed at her with a grin of his own, and told her, "I know exactly who you are." And then the realization started dawning on her. Then she showed more than her hand in this, an incriminating amount even, and altogether that overdrawn grin of hers sunk down to a look of panic. "You're that crazy woman who doesn't cover her windows and doesn't wear anything in her apartment. Well, just the other day, the tenants were going on about you streaking down to the vending machine. I know who you are." "No, you just told me you go double or nothing about leaving the curtains open." "No, I didn't." "You keep lying like that, and the gnomes are gonna get you. You're gonna get got, missy." And that miserable woman was just about to cry at that moment. She turned and scampered back. The man had to wonder if this whole thing was just a maladapted way of making small talk. But he had more important things to ponder down by his feet. Half of every conduit he was sent to work on became a den of mycelium, feeding off leaky pipes and bundling themselves around the high-power lines and whatever else. When all of the sounds he forgot he was hearing were snuffed to the dreadful silence, all of the little hummings and buzzings of so much machinery going deathly still, he blinked and the halls stayed dark. The power was out. The lights were out. That spooky reddish glow of the backup lamps came on to give the faintest hint of lighting. The man stood up, dusted himself off. Gravity was still on, and that was the one saving grace. He was getting worried that the work might be more extensive than his fellows and he could solve. He thought that he heard patterns of that weirdo running down the halls for a moment there, yet it was much lighter shuffling, something small as a squirrel scampering on two hind feet. He saw it backlit in red, a tiny man, his hat a steep cone, near a cubit tall, counting the hat. It just stood there, still and menacing, until at last the wee creature waved hello and goodbye, and then hurried out of sight. The lights were back on. Well, it looks like the gnomes are real, which means the window man may also be real. I mean, one supernatural creature existing does not necessarily mean other mythology supernatural creatures exist, because they're all independent of each other. But it does give an argument that maybe they do exist, and maybe what the woman is doing is working in keeping the window man at bay. Who knows? But also, I bet you get like really bizarre stories working in a hotel, like for real. If anybody's had experience working in a hotel, let me know in the comments, because I'm curious. Obviously, I don't think every night at a hotel is going to be crazy, but I'm sure that there are crazy hotels. I'm thinking back to like this hotel that I stayed at when I went to a wedding in Tennessee, like in 2017, 2018. I can't remember. It was around, must have been, it wasn't 2017. It was probably 2015. It had to be 2015. Okay. I know what year it was, because it correlates with where I was working at the time, or it's placed in time where I was working at the time. Anyway, I went to Rogersville, Tennessee, which is in the middle of nowhere, for a wedding of a friend of mine from grad school. And there were stink bugs. Just like I spent 3 or 4 hours just using the 3-ring binder that had all of the like information packet for the hotel. And this was like not a Holiday Inn. This was like a mid-brow chain though. And I remember I was watching Project Runway trying to like wait out the bugs not coming in. So when another one came in, I would grab the book and then throw it at the ceiling to kill it. When it fell down, then I'd sit down, I'd wait to watch, another bug would come. And I could not sleep. I had a situation as a child where there was a spider on the ceiling. Obviously, this is one of my core memories because I still remember it to this day. There was a spider in the corner of the ceiling when I was a kid. And I was like, okay, I don't want to go to sleep. But then I did fall, because there's a spider. But then I did fall asleep. And I wake up and the thing is in my ear. And so like with the bugs crawling in, I could not sleep. So I spent hours washing it. And I also went downstairs to tell them that there were bugs crawling in my room. And he was like, yeah, it's just that time of year it happens. So then I go back up there, and then it's a few more hours. Then it's like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, okay, they're still coming in. I can't do this. So then I grab my things, and I'm leaving, and the guy at the front desk is like, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going to go sleep in my car, because the stink bug army is not stopping. And then the guy goes and looks at my room, and he comes back and he's like, whoa, yeah, okay, I'm gonna move you. So even that was abnormal. I don't know that room was cursed, because the next room that they moved me in, there were no bugs. So I don't know. But just speaking of weird hotel experiences, that was not me working at a hotel, but just like, it was just bugs, but it still felt kind of Twilight Zone-y with just bugs spawning. And they were big boys. I don't care how small my hands are. It was decent chunked. Anyway, the next story is by F. Jeremiah Chamberlain, called From Willard Mason and the New Nabbers, 05. Tuesday, 22nd of May, 1905. Willard adjusted the day's paper in his hands and held it a little tighter. The two men he watched turned back to the concierge and resumed their conversation. They haggled with him over some inaudible matter, keeping their gesticulations more or less to themselves. They were suspicious types, dressed in all black, edgy on the feet, hands a little too close to their waistlines. They were antsy about something, and that made Willard antsy too. Sure, it wasn't any of his business what these or any suspicious men were up to, but such men usually made it his business further on down the line. All the same, he had a job waiting for him. He knew what to do if what he suspected came to pass, as he usually did, and sank back into the hotel lobby recliner with one eye on the men and another on the front entrance. Soon enough, the call came. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Mr. Mason?" Willard looked up and saw the bellboy barely breaching the clearance of his newspaper. "Who's asking?" The bellboy fished a scrap of paper from his pocket, attempting to read it before giving up and handing it to Willard. It said, a neighbor in need. Thank you kindly, kid. Willard folded up the paper and followed him. As they neared the concierge's desk, Willard produced a piece of rubbish from his coat and made an excuse to the bellhop of his need to dispose of it. Fending off offers to do it for him, Willard chose the receptacle closest to the desk. One of the shucks started, but only just enough to catch Willard's eyes. The two exchanged terse glares, Willard doing his best impression of a stranger and the man that of a calmly irate customer. The both read the lie off the other like a billboard, and both were aware of it, but neither dared to break the facade. Willard returned to his business and followed the bellboy out of the room 446. He tried to make small talk with the elevator operator to get the feel for the hotel's atmosphere, but found that even he wouldn't make much small talk with a gringo for a tip. Willard shrugged to himself and marveled at Huigalpa's hospitality. When he reached his destination, Willard tossed the bellboy a peso for his trouble and another to keep quiet. He then knocked 7 times and stood back from the peephole. "Yes? And you?" came a voice from the other side. The door opened, and a man dressed in evening suit greeted him. "Good night. Please come in, sir." It shamed Willard that it took so long to recognize him, but he finally put 2 and 2 together once the door was closed and shut behind him. "Your Excellency, a pleasure to run into you again." He looked for the ring on his finger to kiss, but found none. "Ah, don't worry about that," Bishop Raoul said, motioning to an empty chair. "Discretion and all that. I trust you of all people to understand." "Of course. Otherwise, Mr. Iglesias would have solicited someone else's services." In another chair sat a lady dressed in an evening gown. She stood, and Willard took her hand. "Good night, mister." "Good night, madame." Willard kissed her hand and doffed his hat. "W.B. Mason, private investigator." "Detective," the bishop said. "This is Sister Juana de la Rivera, from the convent of St. Clare at the Diocesan Monastery in St. Palchina Augusta." Willard raised an eyebrow at the implication of monks and nuns sharing a convent, to which the reply was a defeated, "Austerity measures." "You can speak in French if you like," Willard said in the tongue. "No, she must at least hear the conversation." Carrying on in Spanish, Raoul explained the job. "Sister Juana is in a dire predicament. She is the only child of one of the mayor's henchmen, who seeks to marry her off. However, being that she is religious, that cannot come to pass. So why not take the hint? I do not know, but the political machine has been perturbing the convent for some time now over her, and the abscess and I no longer believe her to be safe in Huigalpa. There is another community of poor Clares in Costa Rica willing to take her in, but we fear that Rubio's men are everywhere looking for her. So you need me to sneak you out of the city?" Willard directed this to Juana. If it isn't too much of a hassle for you, sir." Willard put on a warm smile. "Hassles are what I get paid for." "Yes," Raoul murmured, "about that. Would you be willing to negotiate pay after the job?" This is of incredible time sensitivity. Memories of the men in the lobby flashed before his eyes. This time, Willard stood and began to light up a roll of Umpa's finest. "Get ready to leave in 5 minutes. I'm going to have a smoke and think about how best to smuggle you out of here. Are you ready to leave the city?" "Yes, sir." "And where are you flying to?" "Puerto Viejo. It's not terribly far past the state border." Willard nodded and took a draw from his cigar. "All right, 5 minutes." Taking his hat into his room's balcony with him, Willard ran through the possibilities. The most immediate option was to keep up the disguise Sister Juana was already in, at least until they left Huigalpa. But Rubio's men stalked the streets at all hours, and likely knew what she looked like in and out of her habit. The next idea was to hide her in a crate and ship her off. That had merits to it, but how would he get away with it? He thought back to the movers that he met earlier that month, and chuckled at the thought of breaking them out the jail for a favor. But the Diocese of Huigalpa had plenty of shipping in and out, especially because of the cathedral's construction. Juana could fit in a box or under some hay long enough to get clear of the trouble, and then it'd just be a simple bodyguard job after that. Surely the poor diocese under construction could afford that at least. Satisfied with his plan, Willard turned back to the room and passed through the sliding glass doors and curtains partitioning the balcony from the rest of the room. The room, however, was now unoccupied, except for him. Willard checked the closet, the lavatory, and even the beds of Raoul and Juana. They were both gone, with no sign of struggle or forced entry. Without a trace. Willard sighed, donned his hat, and checked the rounds of his 44 Bates and Bailey. Now I'm really back on the clock. What a start. This feels like part of a polished novel, thriller novel of sorts, espionage novel. Like, I can see the exact audience for this. And like, it's not a genre that I read, but it is a genre that I have read a couple of things for recently, partially for a contest that I've been judging. And the audience for this book, this type of book, it feels also like Jason Statham style stories, which that's not an insult. It's an action packed story. I know that some people are like, ooh, Jason Statham. Look, some years ago, like probably 15 years ago at this point, shh, we don't talk about time. But it's a while ago when I was in college, I definitely was going through a watching Jason Statham movies period because I liked the action scenes and I liked the driving and it was just fun. Not Crank though. Crank was not my style. The Transporter was like what I liked at that time specifically. But then there were other things Jason Statham did that I was also like, I'm chill. And just because the action scenes were so good. The last story of this month is Fayanzār. I've been seeing Aiden for 6 months now, but I've never seen him so pissed off as he is right now. He's doing nothing but sitting in an armchair, too small for his lupine figure, his arms crossed over his chest, his hair standing on the end. Every time he casts another glance on me, I groan, cover my face with my hands, and peek out at him through my fingers. I'm sorry, Aiden, okay? I say for the 20th time this afternoon. How was I supposed to know that this hotel... Matt, Aiden says in his flattest voice ever. Mate. Bro, dude, it's called the fucking Wolf Paradise. What the hell did you expect? Well, I mean, I can only shrug at this point. You're a wolf. Get out of my face. I squeak and almost fall back on the chair, even though his growl wasn't directed at me. A smallish gray wolf that has just approached Aiden to sniff his tail recoils with a yelp, doing a half flip in the air and then scurries away, whimpering softly. I groan and finally pull my hands away from my face. The hotel lounge that we're in looks no less surreal than it did when we arrived an hour ago. The best words to describe it would be wolves, the maximum allowable concentration of wolves. Some are sleeping in armchairs, some are lying on huge cushions and wagging their tails lazily. A few others are strolling around as confidently as if they own the place, and apparently they do, judging by the huge posters over the reception desk area that read the one and only inclusive resort for wolves and their owners alike. On the bright side, I say as my brain feverishly tries to come up with an excuse, there are, lots of doggos to play with. Aiden gives a disdainful snort and turns his head slightly away from me. I refuse to partake in games with such lowly creature, he says with an offended scowl. Whoa, I say, leaning back in the armchair, didn't take you as a high and mighty type. Listen, you. Aiden turns back to me and points a finger at my chest, but is immediately interrupted by a receptionist with a worryingly bright smile. With a quick wink she gives me, she makes it clear that we're definitely not the first people to get into such a predicament. Hello, I'm Kate. I get a slight chill as her smile becomes even wider. Your room will be ready in a few minutes. I made sure that it included an extra king-sized bed for the big guy. She flashes Aiden the same dazzling grin. He lets out another but his tail betrays him by making a few barely discernible waggles. But besides, she lowers her voice to whisper and leans closer to Aiden now. I can't hear anything, but I don't need to. First, his ears perk up and his tail starts wagging again. A moment later, his hair settles also, and he licks his lips in a seemingly involuntary moment. I do even notice Kate sliding something into his hands, and he immediately wraps his giant fingers around it. Straightening up, she gives us another insane smile that makes my head spin, drops the key into Aiden's hand, turns around, and goes back to her desk. I open my mouth to comment on it at least somehow, but I don't manage it. Aiden stands up abruptly, grabs my hand, and yanks me out of the armchair. We're staying, he says gruffly. Wait, I say, barely able to keep up his pace. Is it about the steak buffet? But you said no, he interrupts. Well, not only. As he marches me toward the lift, I catch a glimpse of the brochure in his hands, flipped open to the spa services page, circled in red ink, 24/7 belly rubs and ear scratches, professional grade. I blink. Wait, you're staying for the... He growls, and his tail is a dead giveaway. Shut up. Professional grade belly rubs and ear scratches. My guy, you got the steak buffet, belly rubs, ear scratches, your boyfriend. It's gonna be a good time. That's all that I can say. What fun. I love when stories continue from other things, even if it's not like This one is, I'm pretty sure, immediately from the previous one. But even if there are like skip weeks and then it becomes like the thing is brought back, I love continuation story. These guys also have really great chemistry together for like it being such a compact story. But on all of these stories that you guys have submitted, the characters just have so much chemistry. I cannot tell you for all of the books that I read, and you're going to see the book that we're going to talk about on Thursday. You guys all beat Chuck Wendig in writing characters, at least in all of these stories. So we got the creepy, we got the fun, we got the bizarre, and we have a good time. Also, maybe think twice before going home with a lady, Michael. Anyway, those are the LMIAYs for this month. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments down below. With that said, check out next month's LMIAY. Have a great week. Happy May. Happy Mother's Day to the upcoming Mother's Day mothers. And don't die. Don't forget to get your mom something if you've forgotten Mother's Day is coming. This is your week warning because it is this coming Sunday. Don't tell your mom that I reminded you it's coming. Anyway, don't die.
To my children, Tommy, Ike, and Annabelle, if you forget everything else I ever said in the lifetime we shared together, I need you to remember 3 things. 1. Minimize violence done to and by women. As givers of life, it's against their nature, God's design, to do harm, and every act of violence done to them is meant to break their souls, turning what should be a giver of hope into a black widow, a woman who destroys the life and the mercy of her care for no other reason but the corruption of her own self. It is only when you come across these kinds of women that you should put them down, for they are no better than the men who tarnished them. However, take no glee in what must be done. Finding any life so far gone, a black hole is where someone's heart should be, leaves only one solution. The mercy of death, and it's a tragedy when it happens. Make no mistake, a woman's love is the most powerful thing on this earth. It can start wars, end them, and change the devil himself into someone God sees worthy of giving a second chance. She don't owe this love to anyone, but she do carry it around with her so long as she's living. That is why the devil will do everything he can to pervert women's nature and destroy their innocence. Of every crime you can commit during your lifetime, be it out of daring or necessity, for every defiance you may act out against God, government, or man, avoid harming the innocent. For the day that we become bloodthirsty beasts where love don't exist anymore, is the day hell on earth has come. And as bad as it may seem at times nowadays, we ain't there yet. 2. Everything you do in your life will create consequences, both seen and unseen, extending further than you can imagine. Nothing you do exists solely within your arm's reach. Think about every decision you make, every action you take, because you won't know how long your choices will stalk you, be them destructions or blessings, rumors or history been made. The truth of the matter is, your life will be controlled not by the truth of what you've done, but by the way others carry on about you. And the thoughts of others are more real in the long term than what you know to be true. It won't stop affecting you just because it ain't real, and no matter the life you've lived, most men can't outrun what's written in them in ink. It ain't hopeless though. Be firm in knowing who you are outside of the noise, and live beyond the means of the news of the day. 3. There ain't anything stronger than a family you build for yourself. What you put together is worth fighting for. Protect your loved ones with your life, and they'll give theirs in return. Family ain't defined by blood, understand that. And for as strong as the bonds of your family are, know that you'll find just as much passion in the people who hate you. While you'll risk your life for those you care about, those who find your existence to be an insult to theirs will risk themselves to put an end to their affliction. As cruel as it may seem, a man who hates you will stop at nothing until one of you is dead. It's a mistake to believe anything different. Don't let you be the ones taken from, be it by outlaw lawmen or by someone in between. The only one who'll be looking out for you is you and your kin. Maybe there's another way to be, but in all my years I've seen the worst of man, I ain't found another way around man's desire to conquer against all else. There ain't a changing of that mind, and sometimes I believe there ain't the ability for man to change at all, least of all through lead or legislation. I ain't claiming to be right about nothing. On many things, I don't want to be right. But what I do want is for my kids to live a better life than the one I did and avoid the mistakes that I made while finding the truth and purpose in what matter more than gold in this country. It's my hope that by sharing the things I learned that my kids will be better than their old man ever was, and that what I done isn't what people remember me for, but who y'all are gonna become. That'll be the legend of Bill Cassidy.